Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. If you have your own song you'd like to submit for special selection, you can find a link to do so in the description below. Today's comes at us from Autumn Sphere. It says post-folk shamanistic atmospheric black metal from South America. Apparently that's a thing, and we're going to find out about it today. I can't imagine South American folk blending with black metal, but I guess we're going to find out with the band Kaatayra, the song Iasá. Drumming is very black metal. The production is not, though. It's actually kind of wide. Ooh, messing with that groove with those snare hits. Really playful with rhythmic phrasing as well. See, even right here, going for those 3 hits. Hasn't really been a strong sense of melody yet. It's more about interlocking ornamental ideas. Bit of dynamic play here, quite a bit quieter. But see, the glockenspiel on the left and the guitar on the right are creating a Hocket where they're interweaving their lines to create a melody. But on their own, they're sort of just embellishing ideas. Here we have the altering between the flute and some sort of lute, something in the guitar family. We actually have 2 of the guitars and the flute all interweaving. Vocals are pushed way into the mix. They're barely even noticeable, and at least to my ears, can't make any syllables out. Nice little hard stop there. really like this section though. Sounds like we have a hand drum. Growls are so quiet there, even quieter than the vocals, or the cleans. Yeah, I really like this rhythmic idea that we've had in this section. Yeah, there was this slide. It was like doo 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 doo. It was two quick notes where it hits a pitch and drops down. Could have been a slide to like doo doo, something like that. But we were getting them in pockets of two, with the rest of one, making them odd against the even meters or the even meter. And it contrasted. Basically a 3 against 4 idea. I think that's the first atmospheric held out note over there on the right. We got that nice lead arpeggiating flute, and then everything else is just sort of this very meditative idea, just kind of repeating itself and, you know, sitting in this vibe. We had that nice panning idea. Where's 1? I gotta believe that we're still in 4, but I think our phrasing just doesn't line up with typical 4 phrasing. And it might actually be multiple bars long. I'd wager we are entering some polymetric ideas though, because we did have a little bit of them earlier. Yeah, especially since we keep shifting from downbeats to offbeats for accents, that's gonna mess it up. It's also an odd phrase. Ooh, 7.5 bar phrase. What is that, 30 beats? That's odd. Yeah, I'm lost here. And I think that's fine. I think your average person's supposed to just be falling into the music here, not trying to puzzle it out. Yeah, we're definitely back to a 4-bar phrase of 4/4 though. I think this is the closest to traditional black metal we've been. With even the melodies sitting on a single note and just hammering this tempo in. Even the vocals are getting the panning treatment. And that's the first time we've heard a violin, no? Interesting. Near the end of the song, actually bringing the vocals up. Multi-layered too to make them sound larger. And the bird songs. Huh. So this came out November of 2021. It's a brand new work. It's only, what is it, 7 months old now? Which, I mean, in the world of the internet, 7 months is it's a lifetime. So much thing happens, and there's so many things happen in 7 months that it feels like so long ago as far as, just news and music releases and media releases in general, not even just music. I mean, there's so much information we get from the internet that, a song release or an album release from, half a year ago just feels so much longer than that. But I mean, as far as the channel goes for special selections, that's about as near as you can get it because the special selection list is like three. We might be at 4 or 5 months long of a queue right now on it. So yeah, like I said, about as new as you can get for a special selection. Um, so many cool things happening here though. This is okay. First thing I want to talk about is what I think the intended element of the song is. There is way too many sections that do this for it not to be a core aspect or a core foundational building block of this track, and possibly even more from the album and even the artist work. There's a lot of sections in here that just be. They just exist as they are. It's very comfortable with itself. The song is. It can stay in a section for minutes at a time and not even really care. I've mentioned in the past that I have a problem doing that in my own music, that I don't know if it's because I enjoy listening to music that goes somewhere, has momentum and direction, and is constantly pulling me along for a ride. I don't know if it has to do with the way that I listen to music on the channel, very critically and analytically, and when I run out of things to analyze because the song is being repetitious or sticking in a single vibe and not really doing much, I get, I don't want to say bored, but the purpose of my listening reaches an end prematurely. Um, and actually, come to think of it, when I talk about song pacing, it usually has to do with that. The that gap between when the song decides to change what it's doing and when I feel like when I've been fully allowed to analyze a section. When they line up completely, and as soon as I'm like, okay, I'm done here, and we move sections, to me that's really great pacing. But it's really great pacing for a specific person. It's really great pacing for a specific style of listening too. I don't think I ever really made that connection. That is a very biased. I usually talk about pacing in more of a objective tone, I think. I don't know how I come off in videos, actually. I don't know how often I feel like I'm saying things authoritatively and how often I come off as just a dude with an opinion, which is probably why I make sure everyone knows, and I say it like 5 times a video, that I'm just expressing my opinions and what I heard. But I feel like I talk about pacing with a little bit more authority, and it isn't. It's very much a subjective thing here. Anyways, a bit of a side tangent there. Back to this though. Um, but I don't know if it's because of the way I listen casually or the way that I listen critically. Both ways, actually. I just tend to prefer music that moves. It has direction and momentum. It knows where it's going and it gets there in a reasonable time. And it's why slow burns have always been a difficult thing for me, specifically even on the channel. I don't mind them as much casually, but critically for the channel, I don't think I've spoken positively about any slow burn yet. And this doesn't change that. This song revels in the idea of sticking around in an area and just fully exploring it, not adding more layers, not recontextualizing ideas, just allowing it to be. Not so much that the song is exploring the idea, but it gives space and room for the listener to explore the idea. And there's definitely going to be a type of person who really, really enjoys that. But what I get out of it, the big draw that I can see to it, that a lot of people have kind of told me they enjoy out of music like this, is the meditative element. The song basically stops moving, it exists where it is at, and the listener can utilize it to allow their brain and their body to simply exist as well in parallel. No movement of thought, no thinking about the future or the past or stressing, just allowing yourself to be, to exist in the moment. And I can see this music being excellent for that. And it kind of lends itself to the shamanistic vibes. I really didn't hear much that kind of leans into shamanistic playing. I don't even know if I would really know what I'm looking for there, other than some crude stereotypes about what a shaman's music might sound like, which, like I said, are probably a bit stereotypical and probably not what I should be listening for or what I should classify as shamanistic music. But the idea of concentrating and meditating and allowing the soul to wander while the body just exists, I think goes along well with um, some ideas of shamanistic ritual and prayer and meditation. And I think the music, while not sounding shamanistic to me, might allow somebody to participate in meditation, which sounds like a shamanistic thing to me. So it's interesting in that I don't think the music is shaman music, but I do think it allows people to participate in a shamanistic way, which is not typically how I would talk about music. That's more of its effects on the listener rather than a core component of the music, but I think it fits. Um, but what I do hear is a lot of folk elements being utilized, or folk instruments being utilized, even folk elements in the composition being utilized to craft this, what did I just call it? The slow burn, right? And I really enjoy this. So underneath everything, the black metal part of this is the drums, right? There's also some black metal vocals. There's the whole lo-fi production on the drums and the vocals. Like, these things are very black metal. But the drums, I think, are the component that are most present from black metal. They are the representative of black metal in this mixture here. We have constant attacks on snare and bass kicks, 16th notes galore. I didn't hear any double bass kick 16th notes, but a lot of that alternating bass and snare idea really fast. So, very thrashy, extreme metal, black metal, all that right there. And with that comes the tempo. It's a very upbeat track. It moves at quite a pace. And the growls or yells or whatever. And of course, production wise, that stuff is pushed way into the mix. There's a lot of compression and just flattening out of both of those instruments, the drums and the vocals, and just making it sound tiny and compressed and flat, like all the dynamic element has been removed from it. And that is paired up against this very wide soundscape for the folk instruments, which I heard some sort of flute. I heard some stuff in the guitar or lute family. We heard quite a variety of percussive instruments, one of which was even a hand drum. And I know I've used that term before for speaking about instruments like bongos, but in this case, it is the instrument, the hand drum. It is this really cool, like dome that's made out of some sort of metal. I'm sure it can be made out of quite a few different metals. And there are, for lack of better words, dents placed all throughout it. And they're all, precisely crafted so that when you hit any side of this this concave section, it'll produce a specific tone. And all the different concave sections, the dents of it, all have their own tone to them. So you actually have a bunch of pitched notes that you can play, and oftentimes it's played with the this little bone in your thumb, and you're just move between all the different notes on it. It is a beautiful instrument. I use it in a lot of my music. I just really love the way it sounds. It's like a triangle and chimes and glockenspiel all combined into one. It's just a really neat instrument. And there's a little bit of that in here. I think I heard a violin at one point, but it was also a bit cluttered, a bit buried. The attack didn't feel like a violin, but the tone did. So I don't know if maybe I was just mishearing it based on what was around it or something like that. And so we have all of these folk instruments. I also heard like a more traditional guitar in there, not just something lute-like, more like just an acoustic guitar at one point. And all of these instruments are very clearly produced. We can hear their timbres cleanly and clearly. They are placed in the sound sphere, specific places that help augment their, not just their sound, so that we can hear them clearly, but also the placement is picked, determined by how it works within the music. A lot of this we're going to get into. We have two or more instruments that work well with each other. They're pairs of instruments, so to speak. They're always placed on opposite sides of center. And like I said, it's a very wide sound sphere, and some of these instruments are also panned from left to right, or they bounce back and forth, or they start on one side and then they come out on another. There's a lot of really great production going on in here that allows the production to be an instrument just as much as the instruments are. And you would think this would clash pretty hard with the lo-fi in the black metal elements, but outside of the vocals, I don't think they did. In fact, I don't even think all the vocals clashed hard at all. It was just a few of them back at the beginning that I just don't think really worked well. But we'll get into that. What I'm talking about here, though, mostly is the production and the instrumentation. But see, here's the neat thing, right? What if we didn't think about this as the black metal and the lo-fi section versus the acoustic work and the hi-fi production? What if we just took that black metal section as an instrument unto itself? Its natural timbre is compressed and narrow. It doesn't have a lot of dynamic qualities to it. Then what do we do with it? Well, now we treat it like anything else, and we can place it in the larger, wider sound sphere of the folk higher quality production. And in that sense, the vocals and the drums both fit because they don't clash with everything else. It's just seen as a whole instrument unto itself. And it's really interesting because despite being the drums, they're not given a lot of prominence. They're already sort of compressed down because of the black metal lo-fi production, but they're also just not given any prominence when you look at the larger picture. They're placed behind and underneath a lot of all the other instruments that are at play. They're all louder, they're all more precisely placed, and they're all clearer to hear. They're more distinct than just this staticky rumbling that kind of exists under everything. And that's exactly what it does, though. It provides that texture, that fuzziness underneath everything. In so many cases, even while the drums are playing the 16th notes and providing that black metal rhythmic undertone, there's other instruments also playing those exact same rhythms. In fact, the drums, I would say, are secondary rhythmic or percussive instruments here, where a lot of the strings end up being primary rhythmic or percussive instruments. Just because of the short staccato notes that a lot of them play, and the fact that when we bring multiple ideas together and form the full Hocket, we end up seeing just a string of 16th notes. So, yeah, the drums are a flavor. If we removed them, I don't know that the song would sound much different. We would lose some of the bassiness. We would lose a little bit of that dark crunchiness. So the tone might change, but that rhythmic drive is still present in the folk aspect as well. It, like I said, it fills more of a secondary role. It helps with texture and tone and atmosphere, and it further supports the rhythmic choices found in the core instruments. But it is not, like it is in black metal, the main component to driving the rhythm forward. And I think that's one of the big ways that this goes about, aside from the production and treating everything black metal related as a singular instrument in the larger production. I think it's one of the most important ways that this person, whoever composed this, found a way to pair the black metal with the folk in a way that works. It feels a bit natural. It really is those two things. Now, I've said the word Hocket a couple of times now if you're new to the channel, or if you just haven't seen the few other times I've brought it up. A Hocket is when two or more instruments have a full idea split among them. So in this case, I had mentioned at the beginning, if you listen to, I think it was like the lute and the glockenspiel, I don't remember. It was one of the first sections when I pointed it out that the two instruments were complementing each other. You'll sort of notice that the melody that's played sounds beautiful, sounds flowing, it just kind of goes together well. But if you really focus in, there's two instruments in there, and they're on two different ears. And if you really focus in, the melody is bouncing back and forth. Couple notes here, then a couple notes here, then one note here, then a few here, then a couple there, then one here, and it's sort of just bouncing back and forth like this. And that's the Hocket. The full idea that you hear is broken up, and specific notes, specific groups of notes, are given to one or the other instrument. They do not play them at the same time. They alternate who is playing the note of this main idea. It is very different from this instrument plays the first bar, then this one plays the second, then this one plays the third, or splitting up even larger and you get the first half and you get the second half. That's not a Hocket, that's passing of an idea. A Hocket is a very specific way of two instruments sort of blending together to a point where it sounds like it's a singular idea because they're bouncing back and forth so often. And that happens everywhere in here. It is a recurring motif. And I don't know if it's intentionally done. I've heard this in a lot of folk music from, South American folk music. I've heard this in African folk music. Some Asian folk music do this. It is a very common recurring thing. Oh, even I need to brush up on Native American music, but the limited exposure I've had, I've also heard this phenomenon there as well. It's just huge in folk. A lot of older cultures used to do this, but it's just giving different. The idea, though, of having one instrument do a rhythm, right? And it's earlier I said I don't even know if this person intentionally created a Hocket, and this is why. You start with one instrument, and you give them these little blurbs, da da dun, da dum, bump bottom, bump, dee 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 dee, right? And you kind of remove all that wild movement, and you just kind of stick with more subtle ideas. Maybe play the same note a few times, right? Some instruments you might even just start with a pedal tone, right? This is going to be they have one note for their rhythm, and they just stick to it. And then another instrument, you come in and you fill in some of the space, all right? So maybe you'll fill in this whole gap, and then you'll fill in one beat of this gap that they had, and then down here you won't play at all, and then in the next gap you'll fill the whole thing again, in the next gap you'll skip that one, won't play, and now this instrument has something that rhythmically complements this one. And then you make a third instrument. You notice some of those gaps I skipped, and sometimes I only filled half of them. This third instrument will fill in the rest of those gaps. This is still a Hocket. It's just going about it from a different way. At least when I write Hockets, I tend to write the main idea first, and then I divvy out the notes. This is more about creating specific rhythmic ideas and then filling in them to ensure that you have all the notes present, because we're trying to keep the 16th beat attack going from the black metal element. So once this is all done, though, you have a couple notes here, couple notes there, couple notes there, back to here, back to there, back to there, and it all comes together in this single flowing melody. It is a Hocket, it's just a different way of going about it, and maybe some people don't realize they're making a Hocket. But that's exactly what it is. And I feel like that's what's going on here because there's more emphasis being put on the rhythmic bounciness than the melodic cohesion. Not every single one of these sections sounds beautiful rhythmically. The rhythm certainly bounces around all over the place from all the instruments, very much a Hocket, but what's more important is how the rhythm bounces around between these and creates grooves. And that's why a lot of this feels groovy to me when black metal typically doesn't. Black metal is typically really associated with uh, recurring attacks. There's not really much accent that goes on in typical black metal. There's certainly a lot of blackened styles that might work more with rhythmic grooves. But in my experience, a lot of the black metal we've listened to on the channel is just constant attack, everything at the same velocity. Not much of a variation to have an accented hit where you can feel the groove. It's just this constant recurring attack. So we get this super grooviness out of this rhythmic Hocket that just happens to have a melodic component attached to it. And that makes up a lot of this track. That is what I think to be the core building block for the foundation of almost every section we listen to here. We have the bass, the drums, just laying down the 16th note attack that helps augment the 16th note rhythmic Hocket going on above it in the 2 or 3 instruments on top of that. The final level is the melody, and this is where we typically have our flutes or the vocals at times, or that instrument I thought was the violin, or even sometimes a louder guitar that sits above all the Hocketed stuff. And they sort of just exist up here on their own. And like I said, that kind of suits the entire song. We have groove, we have constant attacks, and we have soothing melody lines. And when those just constantly exist with no change for many bars, you reach that meditative state. So, yeah, it's really neat, not just how it all comes together, but how it seems to come together in so many different ways across the track. This was 13 and a half minutes. There's more tracks on the album, and this is their 5th album, I think, that I saw. I had to look up how to pronounce their name, and there's very few references to this group. I couldn't find interviews. Nobody's done reactions to them. Um, I, I went through a lot of information trying to find it, and I did come across a bit of what I would call spoiler information. Not too bad. Like I said, I know this is their 5th album. I know there's other songs on it, stuff like that that's been around. I also know it's a one-person band, which is pretty interesting. I never did quite figure out the pronunciation, so I hope I got it right at the beginning. Kaatayra is what I said. Anyways, I forgot where I was going with all of that. Oh, meditative state, all that. The last thing I want to talk about, though, before we finish this up, because I couldn't find any lyrics, is polyrhythms. Or I should actually specifically say polymeter. Most of this song is in 4/4. I'm going to wager even that weird section in the middle that had no strong element of rhythm was still in 4/4. I just wasn't catching on to how long, I think. Because like I said, phrasing can really change things up, but polymeter also changes the perceived meter. And polymeter basically says if the band is in 4/4, maybe one of your instruments isn't. So what if one of your instruments is in 4/4 and one of your instruments is 2/4? So the second instrument will have 2 bars, because that's 2 beats, and 2 beats, that's the 2/4, for 1 bar of the other one, because they'll have 4 beats per bar. That lines up pretty easily. I think it's pretty simple to see. Here's a big bar, that's what the one instrument is doing, and the other instrument is doing half bars. right? So every 1 bar for one is 2 for the other. They line back up every 2 or every 4 beats. That is to say, every 4 beats, both of them get a beat 1. So the first one would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, which will be beat 5. And the other one goes 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, which is beat 5 again, right? It gets weird when you introduce odd numbers. So if one instrument is working on 4 and the other one is working on 3, when is the first time that they both reach 1 on the same beat? Well, the answer is typically to multiply it out. They both hit 12, so the 13th beat, they'll both have a downbeat. So we'll have 4 bars of the 3 and 3 bars of the 4. That's not always the best way to go about it, but it's pretty handy way to figure it out quickly, unless you want to get into, just figuring it out by hand. Some numbers might line up a little before that. In that case, though, that is accurate. That is the first time. So your phrase is going to be 12 beats long. In 3, though, that's going to be a 4-bar phrase, which is pretty standard. But in 4, it's going to be a 3-bar phrase, which is not entirely standard. A lot of songs are based off of 4, 8, or 16-bar phrases, including the 16-bar blues. I don't know why I want to bring jazz up real quick, but I do. But right here, we had something interesting going on where, you remember I pointed out the triplet idea. There was a snare hit, I think it was, or like a heavy guitar strum that was doing these weird accents against the 4/4 that we were listening to, and I called it the triplet hit. It was actually not a full triplet, it was 3/8 notes, 3 half beats against the 4. And it was really clashing hard, and it was pushing real hard against that main groove because it constantly changed from a downbeat accent to an upbeat accent. Every 1.5 beats, we would get a new accent, and that would put some of our accents between beats. And I think this triplet idea, or the 3/8 notes idea, the 1.5, was being utilized in this section in the middle that didn't have a strong metric element, and it was really throwing me off. I didn't have anything to put it up against, but it also really didn't work on its own either, because they played around with it. It was a metric modulation. It was designed to push against a different time signature, and that other time signature wasn't there, so without the reference, it was difficult to figure out what it meant. And, that one time I counted 7.5 bars, and that's kind of odd. Half a bar is kind of, a weird place. But what if our phrase isn't 7.5 bars? What if that wasn't a hard repeat? What if it was actually a soft repeat? It seemed like it was repeating another 7.5, but we were actually looking at a 15-bar phrase, which is also odd, but at least it ends at the end of a 4-beat bar. So, time notation can get weird because a lot of it is perceptive based. Time signature, tempo, phrasing, all of this can change wildly on paper and still produce the exact same sound, the same audio, the same song itself. I can take a song and transpose it 8 different ways and have 8 different sheets of paper that have 8 different time signatures and tempos and phrases to them, but they're all the same song. And I think that's what was going on there. It was just I didn't have the right frame of reference to figure out exactly what was going on there. But how I got into this is that was because of polymetric ideas. They were actually utilized quite a bit across this song. And I'd love to listen to it again and really dig in and see how often and if it was anything other than 3 against 4, which was something I heard a lot. Yeah, just another really cool. That's a thing too, right? A lot of this song is just super rhythmic. Anyways, like I said, no lyrics on this one. I looked. I don't think it's in English. I'm pretty sure the song was in Portuguese, and based on what I've read, but I couldn't even find Portuguese ones to throw into a translator. So Unfortunately, no lyrical analysis here, but I think the song speaks for itself as just being a really awesome meditative bridge between acoustic and black metal, and finding an interesting way to marry them in a combination that seems to work well, where they don't fight against each other despite wildly different production techniques. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Kaatayra's Iasá. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up with your comments. Let me know what you thought of this one. Liked it, didn't like it. Have you ever heard anything like this before? You know, you're going to have to check out more of this. I know there's a lot of black metal fans in here, and while this is probably not the sound you typically listen for when you're, trying to find black metal, I wonder how many black metal fans in the comments or in the community are going to be further exploring this, because it has just enough black metal in it to keep you interested for your specific tastes in music, but it's a way for you to explore something you don't typically get into, folk music. So yeah, when you're done commenting, head up to the description box. I mean, you guys know the jam. Linktree link is in there, takes you to this menu. You can join the Patreon and vote on future themes and songs. You can follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, pick up some merch. Above that, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll check out some more videos, special selection, and all that jazz. That's at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.